news.
Thank you very much for that. And just a reminder to all our viewers on the big conversation tonight that we are focusing on two big topics in the field of education, and that is the funding, particularly of higher education. We will also be getting to CBC, that's basic education, in just a moment as well. And before we get into, just answering some of the questions that have been raised to our panel here from government, just to let you know of a slight guest change here on our side for just a moment. Dr. Elias Abdi, who's a Director General in the Ministry of Education, he is still with us because we'll be talking about basic education in a moment. But just for the purposes of answering the questions regarding university funding, he is now replaced by Charles Ringera, who's the CEO of the Higher Education Loans Board. And that is why, Lincoln, we have some, great follow-up questions that I'm sure they're waiting to answer.
Na bila shaka maswali ni mengi sana ambayo yameibuka kutoka kwa wadau tofauti ambao tumezungumza nao. Tumezungumza na wananchi wenyewe, tumezungumza na wataalamu wa masuala ya elimu na wengine ambao wametoa hoja tofauti, na nafikiri ni vizuri kwanza tusikie hoja zake Charles Ringera ambaye anasimamia HELB, kwa kusikiliza baadhi ya yale ambayo yamejitokeza kutoka kule Nakuru kwenda Uasin Gishu. Unapata kwamba wengi wa Kenya wanaamini kwamba elimu ni ya watu walio na pesa zaidi. Tuna muda wa siku 19 Bwana Ringera kabla ya wanafunzi waingia katika vyuo vikuu. HELB imejipanga vipi kuweza kuwasaidia wale ambao wanateta kwamba hawana uwezo kuendeleza masomo yao? Wahisi mna muda wa kutosha kuweza kushughulikia maombi yote ambayo yatatolewa kwenu?
Asante Lincoln. Kwanza wacha nianze kusema ya kwamba shirika la mkopo la bodi ya HELB tumejipanga, tumejizatiti vilivyo kuweka mikakati ambayo wale wanaomba ile maombi wataweza kufanya application ile, na vile tutaweza kuiprocess na zile siku zimebaki. Nikitoka kwa meza yangu leo, jioni ya leo, already nimeona 4,000 washaomba maombi yao. Wale wanataka scholarship, wale wanataka loan, na wale wanataka pia bursaries. Kwa hivyo muda sio shinda, sababu hii ni teknolojia ambayo ina process, na ile teknolojia validation ile tunafanya kulingana tukitumia ile inaitwa artificial intelligence. Kwa hivyo muda ule tuko nayo ni muda mwafaka kabisa wa kuweza sisi tuweze kuprocess hizo application forms zile zote tunangojea, ambayo ni 100,000 na 140,000. Hizo ndio zile tunangoja ziweze kutufikia sisi kutoka university. Pande ya Tivet tunangojea 1,125 hivi, na tunajua sio watu wote wataweza kuomba. Pande ile ambayo ungesema kungekuwa na changamoto ni pande ya fedha, na nataka kuhakikishia nchi ya kwamba serikali imejipanga vilivyo. Pesa iko tayari, maombi kishaomba, na tukijua mtoto wako kategori hii ama ile kategori nyingine anapata kiasi gani ya mkopo na kiasi gani ya scholarship, hiyo itaweza kuachiliwa kwa university ile wiki ya kwanza ambayo watoto wanaingia university, ambayo ni wiki ya kwanza ya mwezi wa 9.
Lakini Bwana Ringera, kile ambacho tumekipata tukiwa katika break ni kwamba wengi wa wale ambao wamejaribu kuingia kwenye poto hata sasa hivi wanasema wameshindwa kupata ile access kuingia katika hii poto.
Na kutoka Jumatatu ambayo ndio siku ya kwanza kabisa ile tulianza kuprocess na hali ya juu, sababu bado walikuwa wanataka zile admission letters kutoka mashule. Tumeona throughput ambayo ni mzuri. Kama venye nimekuambia, saa hii nimeona 4,000 zishaingia ndani. Kama tutaweza kufanya na 4,000 kwa kila siku, hiyo ni namba ambayo by that first tutakuwa tumepata hiyo namba.
Bwana Home, umesikia malalamishi ya wazazi, umesikia malalamishi ya wanafunzi, na kuna jambo ambalo pia Lulu Hassan amelizungumzia pale. Unapoona kwamba watu wengi wanajaribu hata kutafuta masomo katika mataifa ya kigeni, na wewe unajizatiti pale kuweza kutafuta namna wanafunzi wale watasoma katika vyuo vyetu hapa nchini Kenya, taasisi za kiufundi hapa nchini Kenya, lakini wengi wanahiari kusomea hata katika mataifa ya kigeni, wahisi gapi kwa wapi?
Nafikiri jambo la kwanza ni kuwa watu hawaelewi vile serikali inafanya kazi. Tukiangalia wanafunzi waliokuwa wamefanya mtihani wa kidato cha 4 mwaka wa 1114 tulikuwa na namba ya 444,000. Sasa hiyo namba imekuwa mara mbili, double of that. Tulikuwa na 887. So tunaona idadi ya watu inaongezeka, idadi ya wale wanafanya mtihani inaongezeka. Tukiangalia wale walijisajili kujiunga na masomo ya university, tuko na 86%. Hao ni wale wanao tunatarajia kuwa watauliza mkopo wa HELB na scholarship. So tukiangalia vile mahali tumetoka, watu walikuwa wamefika kuogopa kwenda university ama kuangalia Tivet institutions, kwa sababu ile pesa ilikuwa inatengwa bado ilikuwa haiongezeki hata idadi ya watu ikiongezeka. Lakini sasa tunasema hatuwezi endelea na huo mradi kila wakati. Huu mradi wa new funding model, jambo la kwanza ilikuwa ni tuweke placement kando na financing kando. Tukiangalia vile tulikuwa tuna place wanafunzi hapo awali, kila mtu akiingia university, kila mtu akipata placement anatarajia kuwa serikali itagharamia masomo yake. Lakini vile tunaendelea sasa na huu mradi, tutaweka zitakuwa kando. Kwa hivyo wewe ukipata nafasi ya kwenda university na unaona familia inajiweza, unaweza, si lazima uitishe huo mkopo, unaendelea tu. Kwa hivyo wale wamekuwa admitted, the 140,000 tunaongea juu yao, wakiweza, kuna wale wanaweza sema wanajiweza, waendelee ili ile pesa serikali inatenga iangalie wale watakuwa wakiona kweli hawajiweze.
Okay.
Lakini niruhusu niseme kuwa nilisikia watu wakisema kuwa kwa nini tumeweka fee ikiwa juu, kwa nini wakiangalia 612,000. Tulisema katika huu mradi lazima tufanye what we call disclosure, tuweze kuelewa kuwa kama unataka kusomea udaktari, ni gharama ya kusoma udaktari ni ngapi? Kama unafanya education ni ngapi? Kwa sababu tulikuwa tunasema leta 16,000, lakini hiyo si gharama ya masomo. Ukiangalia wale wanaenda ng'ambo pia walikuwa wanaambiwa contribute 1 point something. Hata hapa Kenya.
Yeah, Dr. Wahome, I'm sorry, I just would like to interject for a moment, because you're saying placement and funding should be separated. However,
yes,
two issues for me that perhaps would require some understanding, considering the time between when this working report came out and universities starting in September. There's clearly been very little time.
Yeah.
Right? And then, there's also the question of those who may want to transfer their degrees, because with this new funding means, and everybody says it's not been increased, fair enough, but parents are actually being presented with new higher fees that they have to pay. Whether we want to call it an increase or we want to call it something different, people are going to be paying more, whichever way we want to talk about it. And yet, we have a very short window within which to do that. So there's a parent who would say, we wanted to go for medicine, but we find that is expensive and we're transferring that. So one of the questions to you is, how do you plan to complete those degree transfers before the window of applying for scholarships and loans expires, considering that that's about 3 weeks to go?
Yes. When you look at the number of students who normally ask for transfer, usually when we open our portal, we get about 10% moving either within the universities or opting to go to other universities. And when we look at the reasons for transfers, it's usually around accommodation, So, or the program of choice, it's probably not what one had selected, or when they were doing their third revision, the programs had already been taken. So what we are doing, we are running the two together. The ones who wish to transfer, the portal is open for transfer up to the 15th. Those who do not wish to transfer and are satisfied with the choices, then they can go ahead and apply for the funding.
Okay.
So
yeah, just finish and then we can go to one
and what I would also wish to clarify is we are seeing this because we had that delay in opening the portal as we were doing the, we had the presidential working party still going on, and we even had to get the portal to open before the report was given. But I can tell you this is not something that we are going to see in the next year. For those that would wish to join the Tivet institutions, they are free to walk into their institution, the institution of choice. The placement for Tivet will be running throughout the year, so that we are able to, once they report, we just validate them and they start applying for the scholarships and the loans.
All right.
So for them, that will be a continuous process.
Okay, and you brought up the issue of Tivets. There's a question for you, Dr. Langat, regarding Tivet. On Twitter, Aleki Rono says, I got a D+ in my KCSE. I joined Tivet for craft certificate diploma. I passed, only to be denied admission at the Technical University of Kenya because of my KCSE grade. Please ask the education experts about how one can progress from Tivet to a bachelor's. And in the same line, then there is the question that people are being encouraged to go to Tivet, but is that what the market needs? Because when many people go to apply for jobs, one of the first requirements they're asked for is whether they have a degree, including government jobs. So is there a disconnect between what government is saying in terms of people should go into Tivet because those are the skills that are needed, but that government itself and even private sector is saying, we want those with a degree? Maybe you could answer those two questions together.
Thank you, Yvonne. But just allow me 1 minute to mention that before I looked into the two questions regarding this funding model. I think we have agreed that the old funding model was not working in the sense that we had the budget stagnating despite the number of students increasing. And we saw, for example, in Tivet, where we were giving 30,000 as capitation, reducing to 17,000. And I'm very sure if government would not have done anything to address this, there would be more questions asked than what we are asking for the new model. So I think we need to appreciate that it was the right time to really move away from the model that was not working. To the question that you have asked, of course we have had a challenge in terms of having an integrated system of upward mobility. And this is one of the reasons when we are looking at the Tivet reforms, why for a very long time most people were not ready to go to Tivet because it was seen as a dead end. And there was no possibility for you or guarantee for you to move to higher education if you wish to, in terms of upgrading your career. What has happened over time during the reforms is to be able to establish what we call the Kenya National Qualification Framework, which has been able to give a clear pathways right from Tivet to universities. And one of the reasons, and I'm happy that the students mentioned one technical university, which actually happened to be my university, is sometimes when you apply for an opportunity, and because these opportunities are few, there is a selection criteria, and sometimes one of the reasons to not qualify is because of those reasons in selection criteria. The idea of developing the technical universities was actually to provide an opportunity for students that have gone through the Tivet to move from diploma to undergraduate programs in Tivet. There's still a conversation within the current presidential working party that there will even be a possibility where technical universities will only be reserved for those who are graduated from Tivet to progress to undergraduate, also providing funding for the same.
But then what happens to people like he? So he's gone through, a Tivet program, and then he goes to a university and is told, bring back your KCSE grade. That's time and money that has been spent in seeking education, only for you to be told that it wasn't even necessary to begin with.
Well, it could be a very unfortunate case if the same has happened, because, as I mentioned, in the National Qualification Framework, it provides for the requirement for you to move to the next level is a pass in the subsequent grade. For example, if you are going for undergraduate, you have to look at the pass in the diploma. And there's a possibility that this person started from certificate, you move to diploma. Then when you're going to undergraduate, the requirement is to provide for what you obtain in diploma. Kenya National Qualification Authority is not only working on that qualification framework implementation, but also providing what we call credit accumulation transfer, so that you don't only go to university and probably study in first year, but you are given credit transfer for the courses that you either passed very well or the experience that you have accumulated over time.
Okay.
Lakini kidogo kabla tujatoka katika mada hii, tumezungumza kwa kirefu sana kuhusiana na gharama ya masomo. Wasema kwamba unaweza kusoma katika hizi taasisi za kiufundi Tivet, kisha unaweza kuingia katika chuo kikuu na kupata degree yako. Lakini hasa wengi wa wale ambao hujiunga na hizi Tivet huwa na imani kwamba wakishamaliza masomo yao wanaingia katika job market moja kwa moja, kwamba haitahitajika tena kupata masomo ya chuo kikuu. Ni wasema kwamba hasa hamna nafasi ya wanafunzi wetu ambao ndio wengi ambao wanatafuta nafasi katika hizi taasisi zetu, ambao watapata kazi moja kwa moja baada ya kumaliza masomo yao. Kile cheti chao kiwezi kuwafaidi kupata kazi moja kwa moja.
No, in terms of capacity, I can say we have capacity that can handle the numbers that we are transiting from basic education. At the moment, both public and private Tivet institution in the country is in excess of 2,500. We have government or public institution close to 400, private institution close to another 1,000. County government institution called vocational training centers, they are about 1,000. And there is currently discussion between the national government and the county government to increase the capacities of this institution. And in average, if they are going to take about, let's say in average about 500 students per institution, we are looking at 500,000 plus the capacities that we have in the national institution. So we are able to go in excess of 2 million capacities in our Tivet institution. The only thing at the moment is to make sure that we align our program to market demand, so that we have a clear transition from training to work, and this will also encourage more students to go to Tivet. And we have also seen this over this year alone. When we are doing a placement, we have close to 10,000 students who obtain university entry requirements, but they chose to go to Tivet because of the passion or the career they want to pursue.
All right.
And they hope to, when they finish their training in Tivet, they are still going to pursue the same careers in university.
Bwana Monari, because we're trying to answer all of these questions that have come up, particularly regarding the funding model. This is a two-pronged question. One is, how many estimated numbers of the most vulnerable students that are to join university is the government planning with? I know you've said, that's still a work in progress, but do you have the estimates of, those numbers? And then, with that number, that estimated number, then to ring-fence some availability of those funds. Maybe you could answer that. But here is another question, and I think it is one to do with trust in how government conducts, its issues. I know you've said there's been public participation, but as you can see from the people we have hosted, there is, quite a bit of, there's still questions. There are still many people who are unsure of how this happens. In fact, somebody says, remind these guys that the same government has not been able to deal with the identification of the most vulnerable households to benefit from the cash transfer, particularly for the elderly. So they must learn lessons from that cash transfer process if they are to take the same model to universities. So, I mean, there's a question around, one, trust, and how can you then assure people that they have seen things like these before, and they have not always been above board. The people who are supposed to benefit don't always benefit. And then also just give us the numbers that you are estimating with, particularly with the vulnerable.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the issue of trust. I think we are dealing here with a situation where for the last 25 years and for the last few years, the education sector has been having huge challenges. And we all know that these are institutions that are owned by government. So the issue of ensuring that this will be implemented is not only an issue that can be wished away, because if it is not implemented, then number one, we will not have quality education in the universities. And that will have an impact in our students, because as we said previously, we were funding students using DUC at 48%. We are going down to 21% in the next few years. Therefore, the need to implement and to give assurance that this is a serious matter is how serious this situation would have gone. Number two, we have seen the involvement of all stakeholders during the processing of this model. The first time it was announced, the president himself came out and assured the nation. We have seen the cabinet secretary coming out. The third thing is the parliament itself has allocated funds for this model. So we are not talking about something that is not there. These are funds that are already allocated, and it is only implementation that we are waiting for the students to apply. The other issue about the approximated number of students, we are approximating about 45,000 students to come from vulnerable and extremely needy backgrounds who will walk into universities without paying a cent. Therefore, we will allay fears that they will have a problem in accessing higher education. When we talk about 45,000, that is a huge number. The rest will be supported. We have said we are not leaving any student out. The other thing I want to bring out, and it has not been discussed, an advantage about this model, for the first time, our Muslim brothers and sisters will access a scholarship and will not have an issue with a loan, because previously they have not been applying loan because of their religious belief.
Okay.
We have an opportunity for Muslims to get scholarships of up to 48%, and we know there are 30% in this country. The other big advantage is that students who do not have national IDs for the first time will get a scholarship.
All right.
They have not been accessing loans previously because they are underage.
Na bila shaka ni swala ambalo hatuwezi kulimaliza na usiku mmoja. Ni masuala ambayo kama umeyasikia yana joto sana, yana hisia nyingi sana ambazo tumezipata kutoka kwa washirika dau tofauti kama wanafunzi, hali kadhalika wale wazazi. Na masuala ya elimu ya juu tumeyazungumzia kwa kirefu sana. Natumai itakuwa ni vizuri Okora tuzungumze pia masuala yanahusiana na CBC, pia nayo ina maneno.
Yes, and for that we take you to Jeff and Lulu.